Hi, everybody. Here we are, Institute of Metaphysical Science, and we're live with Betty Albee. And we had a little bit of gremlins happen, so we had to postpone and come in a little bit late today. But hi, Mom, how you doing?
I'm doing fine now that I figured out how to work the computer better.
Excellent. Okay, good. So today it's a lot happening right now. There's a lot going on, all of this that's happening in the world. And so this is our purpose for everybody that's on right now. And you can send us the loves and the likes and just whatever comments you have, please post, just enter them in and then we'll see them. So any questions, any comments, anything like that. And we would be glad to have the participation and answer any questions. So there is, like I said, there's a lot going on right now. It's a very interesting time. And I see a lot of people's emotions going up and down with however much they're watching the news or however bored they happen to be at home because they feel like they're stuck. So anyway, so we're here to talk about metaphysical science and metaphysical science perspective on all the stuff that's going on right now. So I'm here with my mom, Betty Albee. Betty Albee. So welcome, and let's jump in, Mom. What you got for us?
All right. I really want to talk about this really basic statement that Ms. Zeddy made when she told us exactly how to practice this science. And she does that on page 424 in Science and Health. And she says, and I'm reading it right now, she says, we must leave the mortal basis of belief and unite with the one mind. In order to change the notion of chance to the proper sense of God's unerring direction and thus bring out harmony. You know, it reminds me of the Bible quote, and I may have used this before, but seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all these things will be added unto you. If you can sort of wrap your approach, your thinking around this idea that there is a divinity that shapes our ends, like Shakespeare said. And look at that. Whenever Betty shows up, for example, divine being is present. When Kim shows up, divine being is present. When you show up and look at yourself in the mirror, divine being is present. Something is present more than the thing you see in the mirror. So Ms. Zeddy says, that's the thing you look to, not the thing in the mirror. The thing in the mirror is like a piece in the Monopoly game. You have it to play the game of human living, but who you are is not visible in the mirror. I want to say that again. Who you are is not visible in the mirror. The way you see yourself is what you're looking at in the mirror. There's so much more to you than has ever been captured in a mirror. So I really want to emphasize that because we forget when we hear all the sensational news on the television, we hear about what's going on and how terrible this thing is and how limited things are and how we are lacking in this and upset about that and threatened by something else. You have to return to yourself. You have to get back to what is really going on. All those pictures flashing across my screen of vision and human living? Or is there something else going on looking like that? So what could that something else be? Well, Mrs. Zeddy wrote a whole book about it. Mrs. Laird wrote another book about it. I've written a book about it. What you want to do is write your own book. You want to discover what it is that has you live and move and have being with joy and freedom and peace and some sense of well-being that's totally independent of all that picture that's being flashed on the TV. I can look at all of that and I can actually say to it within myself, oh, that's the way it looks. Now, what's the way that it is? And the way that it is there is a divinity present when humanity shows up. And that divinity embraces the humanity and is available to anybody who will listen. It takes a bit of quieting down all of the commotion to really listen to your own divine being. It's right there where you are all the time. But you got so much activity going on and so many beliefs about the activity that you don't hear your own divine being. So you want to get very quiet. And that's why the other rule of thumb that you want to get to think about for right now is that you want to allow that stuff to be and leave it alone. Just let it be. Oh, yeah, all that terrible stuff they're saying. Oh, my goodness. Threatening, deadly, lacking, limiting, all of that stuff. And you want to say, oh, dear, well, wait a minute. If there is divinity shaping my end, as it were, then that means that there's God being present all the time. God being knows no limitation, knows no upset, never is threatened. So you want to see who you really are. You want to take a moment and take a deep breath and say, wait a minute, the way it looks is just the way it looks. The way it is divine. Anybody have any comment about that? Anything you want to say to that?
Just type it into the comments as y'all are listening.
Well, Sandy Jackson already sent me some, but I can't see them because they're on the computer, which I'm now talking on.
Right.
Sandy, you can share them, but I can't share them.
Right. So that it's going to take a lag time. So just keep going, and as we see comments, we'll bring them up.
Yeah. So let's see. When you leave that basis of belief, I just shorten it to leave it alone. I don't have any big departure ceremony. You just leave it alone. Let it be.
Just don't take issue.
That's right. No energy on it at all. Allow it.
If you notice your judgment, your fear, your frustration, notice it and allow it to just be. Don't have to do anything with it.
Right. For one thing, we know for sure, the two-legged animal will always have opinions and judgments and ways that they prefer to do it and things they like and things they don't like and forever. That's not going to change. But just leave it alone. Yeah, that's okay. Two-legged animals behave that way. All right. Is that who I am? No, not at all. Is that the way it looks? Yep, all the time. Okay, so Mrs. Laird used to quote, I think it's a statement from Mrs. Eddy, but Mrs. Laird used to quote it a lot, and she says, you feel the energy of spirit and rise into newness of life. Well, the energy of spirit, the energy of the God idea, has nothing to do with the picture. The picture is something I draw to aid my own comprehension, if I can put it that way. It's the only way I can see what's actually going on. So that's why I leave the picture alone and look to the idea. I look to the spiritual sense. I'm just trying to think how to say that. Mrs. Eddy talks about understanding, and ultimately you learn that understanding is the key to freedom. And understanding is not something that you acquire by diligent effort. Understanding is like an ingredient of your being, because everything that mind does, all the action of mind, constitutes man. So it isn't something I do, it's something I am. So as the understanding, of being that's present, calling itself Betty, I can relax and leave that picture alone and say, well, I don't know why it looks that way. And on I go. And the minute I release all energy on that picture, any capacity it has to affect any of my experience disappears. Because nothing can touch me that I don't allow. And I allow it by putting energy on it, by approving it or arguing with it or criticizing it or condemning it or you name it. All of that puts energy on it and has that picture persist and persist and persist and persist. The only time it disappears is when it has no energy on it at all. None. Anybody have any comment or any question?
There hasn't been anything yet. People are listening though.
Okay. Well, you know, one of the things that I just loved when I was listening to one of Margaret Laird's seminars, and she says in it, the occurrence has, the concept, my point of view, my language view, has no occurrence. It never occurs. Think about that. All the stuff we think is going on around us all the time, that's our point of view. But it actually has no occurrence. What occurs is God being. What occurs is reality present. The picture that I have of it has no occurrence at all.
I'm reminded of there was a movie with Jodie Foster. Oh, what was the name of it? Darn it, it's right on the tip of my tongue. But it was where she was an astronomer. She was looking in life at outer space, and she was, looking through the thing, and they were working on a machine. And she went through this machine, and on the outside, it looked like nothing happened. But what happened is she actually ended up walking along the beach, and it was almost like she was walking there with God, I think. But then it was like, this is an easier form for you to understand. That's why she showed up. The form showed up as her father, and she and her father walking along the beach.
Right.
Because it's a form that she could understand, that wouldn't freak her out.
Yep.
And I feel like what we see in our world, what we experience in our world, and the view of it is always something in a view that's for our own discovering, for our own understanding. There's nothing ever that comes up that we're not ready for.
That's right.
Even if we think we're not ready for it.
Yep.
That it's there for our own self-discovery, our own divinity, putting it forth in our world, if you will.
Yeah, you're painting it on your canvas of living.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so there isn't anything, and I know that I was in Costco this past weekend, and we were buying toilet paper. No, anyways, we were buying some stuff at Costco. And what was interesting, there wasn't a lot of people in there, but what was really interesting is you could feel the fear that was kind of there and present with people as they would go by, or that you would be, around them. And it was so solemn. There was no smiles. It was just very solemn. People, and you could just feel that fear. And I just, it's just like, what I notice is I just calm way down. And it's like, someone needs to go, just stop, give them their space, go ahead. And all of that. But you could just feel that in the store. And so I know there's like real fear present, just right. It's either right on the surface or right under the surface for a lot of people.
I had an experience last week of being in the grocery store and walking up and down the aisle to get what I needed. Mm-hmm. And the lady walked up to me, and I have no idea. I wasn't thinking about her at all, or didn't know her, wasn't anybody I knew. And she just said, your smile lights up the world. And I had been smiling without even thinking about it,
Yeah.
just going along doing my thing. And I thought, pay attention, Betty.
Yeah. Yeah. So the movie was Contact. So Hope told me the movie is Contact. And then she said, so what you're saying, if I'm catching it correctly, is to give the idea, thought, or picture some space so that you can walk through to recognize what is there to create.
Yeah, and even more from the standpoint of scientific metaphysics, it would be what is there creating itself.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What
So
is there creating itself?
Yeah, because you're seeing yourself being present,
Yeah.
present, present. It's never in the past. It's always an appearing.
It's always right now, right now, right
Yeah.
now, right now, right now.
Yeah. And it's a self-generating presence, which mind is, you see. And so man is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wonderful.
All right. What else you got, Mama?
Well, I have the willingness to release all attachment to form opens the window to freedom.
That's good. The willingness to release all attachment to form opens the window to freedom.
Yep. That's in Mind is the Athlete.
Mm-hmm.
I noticed you put the page number down, but it's a long page. That's the quote that I was using from that page.
Oh, there it is. I've got it right here, too. The willingness to release all attachment to form opens the window to freedom. Yeah. And that's like all attachment means your judgments, your opinions, your oh dear,
your self-righteousness,
your even your fear, anything that's kind of riding the show there.
Yep.
Anything that you've got attached to the picture. Oh, this is good. Oh, this is bad. All of that stuff.
I know that I'm right.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Of course, I'm glad you now see that.
Yeah. Yeah. But it is really moving of mountains. It's earth shaking to really stand still in the midst of all this calamity stuff. And just for a second, just for an instant, let it go. Just let it be. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the way it looks. Wonder what the way it is would be.
Right.
What do you think being is?
Right. Yeah, and I want to say it's almost like allow yourself to just breathe.
Yes.
Just
That's
breathe.
called inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very good. Okay, I also wanted to tell anybody that's out there listening, if you have some statement or some part of somebody's seminar or their book, whatever, that you would like to have us discuss, feel free to tell us, let us know, because I can talk about that. I just open the book and pick out something to talk about each time. Might as well be what you want to hear.
Well, let's talk so you've quoted your book, which is Mind is the Athlete. Mm-hmm. And we've looked at Science and Health, which is Mary Baker Eddy. But then there's also Christian Science Re-Explored by Margaret Laird, and you have a couple of quotes from there. Let's look at some of those and have more discussion.
Yeah, well, Margaret wrote, when thinking is no longer conditioned by the theory of two minds, perfection will form its own concept. Mm-hmm. Wouldn't it be fun to see what perfection has in mind?
Right. Now, but let me ask you this. So when thinking is no longer conditioned by the theory of two minds, perfection will form its own concept. Is that getting at when I've got two things going on and I'm kind of playing in the picture, I've got my opinions, I got my judgment, I got my righteousness. Is that stuff just holding things in place that if I let that be, that now things can just go and new can arise? Is that what this is saying, or is it saying something different?
It's saying that when you let it go, then you are free to see what's really present.
Ah, Okay. Yeah. Nice.
You know,
So when you let it go, then you're free. And in that moment,
you
that
can't.
really is the freedom right there, isn't it? It's just really right there is that freedom.
That's right, because it's your world. You know, we are the world we walk through.
Yeah.
And I can never do it for another,
Mm-hmm.
but I can live the joy as my world.
Yeah.
And it's the joy of being.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. And joy, and that gets back to what Margaret used to say about you're happy whether you know it or not.
Yeah. And I remember saying, what good does it do me if I don't know it? She says, it's not supposed to do you any good. It's just the way it is.
Right. Right. Right.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, that's cool. And the whole idea here is live science. I mean, I get all the stuff going on in the world, all of that that's happening, and all the stuff that we hear, and all the oh dear, and everybody's opinion about this and about that, and oh my God, when's the economy going to reopen, and blah blah blah. Well, I'm here to tell you the economy is open, and it may not look like what you think it should look like or what we're used to, but I will tell you that that no matter what that is, if we can drop. If we can do exactly that, just breathe and allow it to be, all kinds of things open up, you know, all kinds of possibilities open up that we aren't even aware of. You know, I woke up this morning only to read all about the ghost kitchens that are sprouting up. And ghost kitchens are literally kitchens where restaurants don't have seats and tables and servers. They just share kitchens with each other to cook their food for delivery.
Mm-hmm.
And those are starting to just go like wildfire right now.
Yep.
You know, so you hear that. And on the other hand, you see that, you know, there's grocery delivery services. My sister ordered her groceries, thought she was going to have to wait a week. And they said, well, how about this afternoon? And she said, well, all right, I could do this afternoon. And then 3 o'clock turned to 4 o'clock, turned to 5 o'clock, turned to 6 o'clock, turned to 7 o'clock, turned to 8 o'clock. And they brought her food the next morning. But
well, they did email her and tell her that it
right,
would be
they told her every hour that it was back another hour, and then they brought it the next morning. But there's also a lot of people that, you know, are looking at this like, wow, why aren't they hiring more drivers? If there's people out of work, why don't they get a lot of people into work and get all that delivery really moving in the areas that really need it? Because it could change how people even shop. If they knew that it was as easy as just signing up and having their food delivered, that could be one more task that they don't have to go do on a weekly basis, right?
So you have people that love doing that.
I know. And so that's the thing, is that it's just, and then they were looking at it like, oh no, that people are going to get such a bad experience of grocery delivery, they're never going to want to have to order groceries, because these companies, as far as this article said, are kind of putting their foot in it in terms of not having the capacity to handle the demand. But at the same time, just look at all of the blessings that are around. And I look at, you know, whether you want to look at it or not, there's ways to just breathe and allow it to be, but there's also ways to look at what's happening and not have it be, oh dear, no matter what circumstances you're facing.
Yeah, and the tendency as a human being is to figure out how to not say, oh dear. But if you're living science, you don't pay any attention to the oh dear. You say it when you say it, and when you don't say it, you don't say it. The point is, who am I being?
Right.
If I'm being that all is infinite mind, infinitely manifest, and this is the way it looks, then I say, oh, that's the point of view. That's just the way it looks. What's the way that it is? And the way that I get in touch with the way that it is start defining the God idea to myself. Because whatever the God idea's got going on is me. And when I'm in that mode, so to speak, there is no threat to well-being. There's joy, there's freedom. And whatever the day requires is not impactful. It simply is, all right, on we go. One moment at a time.
Right. Yeah, very good. Yeah, I like that. That's good.
Well, I'm glad you
got me thinking. I like it. Carry on. No, just kidding.
Well, I have another quote from Margaret Laird, and it says, knowledge of the divinity of humanity makes us permissive of human concepts.
Yeah. Yeah.
In the understanding that that this knowledge of things as they are divinely is the being of what seems to be. See, that is the language showing up.
Mm-hmm.
It's my view of reality present. But it's reality present that gives me freedom, that gives me well-being, gives me joy. The point of view can't do that. It's just the best thing I've got going right at the moment to see myself. It's understandable, or it's my comfort zone, whatever. So I leave it alone.
Yeah.
Is there anything else anybody wants to say?
There hasn't been any other comments so far.
Okay. Do you want to go any further, or shall we stop?
Well, I think that we could talk about there's a quote that you have from, well, you've got a couple of different quotes, but you've got one from Science and Health. Spiritual sense is a conscious, constant capacity to understand God.
Yep.
And then you had it as a note on that to have one thing going on regardless of appearances to the contrary, which I think you have already said in many ways tonight, but it's like allow things to be. And I loved what you said about, what is true? What is truth? What is reality present? What is perfection?
Yep.
It's the God idea. And if the God idea is the source and condition of all that appears or seems to exist or seems to exist, then that's the God idea is right here. Me showing up in my world as my world.
I am that.
I am that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was that's a good place to kind of
thing that, thanks, Kim. There's another thing that I wanted to mention while we have a minute. In Proseworks, the last book in Proseworks called First Church of Christ Scientists and Miscellany, there is an article that Mrs. Eddy wrote called Personality. And the subtitle of Personality is Personal Contagion.
Okay.
And that is it. Let me read just the beginning of it, but I would recommend that anybody that's interested look it up. It's on page 116. And it says, at the time of contagious disease, scientists endeavored to rise in consciousness to the true sense of the omnipotence of life, truth, and love. And this great fact in science realized will stop a contagion. Now that sentence says it all for handling the present threat. Just that first few lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
But personality, that's the belief that you are the two-legged animal, the person that you see in the mirror. That's called personal contagion.
Right. Interesting.
It's addictive.
Because that has two things going on.
Yep.
And it has you be a victim to the appearance world.
You're a victim to your own belief.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What you believe you're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And your point of view. And then that's the
But when we have just one thing going on, one being, one mind, one presence,
mm-hmm.
and one evidence of that presence, one manifestation, there's no threat.
Right.
There's no contagion. There's no anything but divine being itself being.
Right.
Yep.
Very good.
That's your freedom. And every single person walking around like a two-legged animal has that freedom right at their fingertips, so to speak.
Yeah, very good. Okay.
No respecter of persons. Doesn't matter who you are or how much you know or where you've been or any of that. Just one moment of recognizing the fact of being establishes it for that moment.
Right. Very good.
Okay.
Yeah, that's very good. All right. Well, I want to thank
Do this
everybody.
again next week. Should we do this again next week?
Sure. Let's do it same time, same bat channel.
And I'll try to be on time.
That's right. Thursday at 5 o'clock Pacific time. We'll do this again next week. So those of you who want to put that in your calendar and come back out, you can do that. And you can come out here for this conversation. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to type them into the comments. And until this next week, when we'll see you again. And Mom, thank you so much. This was really good. And we'll just keep these conversations going.
All right.
All right, Mom, I love you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.